They say life is a journey, which sounds pretty fun. There is so much potential for adventure and discovery on a journey. But sometimes when you're on a journey, the going gets tough. That mountain gets really steep, that road dwindles to a maze of indecipherable paths, or maybe the canteen goes dry. In the last few months, I have witnessed more than a few people going through some tough places on their journey. There have been serious diagnoses, devastating injuries, even death. When faced with one or more of these at a time, even the most stalwart of saints might with good reason ask, is God with us or not? The lessons of our faith tradition affirm that this is an ancient and oft-repeated question. We might remember the story of the Israelites and their famous exodus from Egypt, where they had been enslaved. With God's help, they escaped, and for years they survived in the desert wilderness, led by God, who used Moses to show them the way. What a journey. Liberation from enslavement, hopes of reaching the promised land, which they imagined to be flowing with milk and honey, and God's provision. But it was a long journey, and when the going got tough, those weary sojourners found themselves longing for the good things they remembered from Egypt. Terrible as it had been there, at least they had been food and water. In the desert wilderness, they didn't always have ready access to either. In the 17th chapter of Exodus, the biblical book that chronicles this journey, we hear these people complain despairingly to their leader Moses. They were dying of thirst, they and their children and their livestock too. They couldn't take it anymore. The story goes like this. From the wilderness of Sin, the whole congregation of the Israelites journeyed by stages, as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do for this people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people. Take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile and go. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock and water will come out of it so the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massah, meaning test, and Meribah, meaning quarrel, because the Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" There it is. That question that has never really gone away. Is God with us or not? And this story provides an answer. Even in the most impossible of situations, God is with us. In the driest, most inhospitable of conditions, God still shows up and provides what we need. But take note, this was not a solo act of God. Audience participation was required. Someone had to go find that rock, take that staff, and strike. Human action was needed in order for God's blessing to be received. In this case, it took Moses, who was willing to venture out and find that place from which would flow God's provision of life-giving, thirst-quenching water. Thank God for Moses, who was able to show the people, yes, God is with us, even in the desert wilderness. Well, things went better after that, at least for a while, but as future generations continued the ongoing journey of faith, things would inevitably get rough from time to time. And that was the travel log of God's people for centuries. With every disaster or communal tragedy, people would cry out, "Is God with us or not?" And each time, some wise priest or prophet would show them, yes, God is with us, and their collective faith would be restored as they remembered the overarching theme of their faith and ours. God's steadfast love lasts forever. God is with us. God will always be with us. Now, even though we say that, it can be hard to believe sometimes, especially when things get really difficult. And our all-knowing God, understanding this to be true, did what we still have trouble wrapping our minds around. God came to us in human form, in the person we know as Jesus of Nazareth, also called Emmanuel, meaning God is with us. A living, breathing, walking, talking answer to that old question, is God with us or not? Yes, God is with us. And this Jesus, who in many ways bore a resemblance to Moses, would continue to help his people see how, yes, God was with them. Look and see. Jesus would strike that proverbial rock to show people how to access what was life-giving, quenching their deepest longings for grace, love, forgiveness, for a sense that God was still with them. Jesus made God's love visible, sometimes tangible, as he met people in the tough places on their journey and helped them access what they needed to continue. Sometimes that might be food or healing or inclusion in community or just being seen, heard, and accepted. Through Jesus, people began to understand the depth of God's love, what Jesus called the true fulfillment of God's law. We can hardly imagine what it must have felt like to the people literally touched by Jesus' life to hear about and maybe even witness his death. It must have felt like God was not with them anymore. Even Jesus' own lips asked that ancient question as he wondered, my God, why have you forsaken me? What a moment of spiritual crisis, as even Jesus wondered if God was with him. But even there on the cross, God was with Jesus, as evident through the resurrection, which provided the final answer to the question, is God with us or not? Even in that darkest night of the soul. Yes, God is with us, will always be with us, and nothing, not even death, can ever come between us and God's steadfast love for us. That is the good news, the core teaching of our faith. God is with us, now and forever. But let's be honest, collective memory of something that happened nearly 2,000 years ago isn't always enough when we are really struggling to make the next steps on our faith journey. Just as the ancient people needed a visible, tangible reminder of God's presence with them, so do we. And the good news for us is that the body of Christ is still alive and well, living and breathing in our midst, even seated beside us and in front of us, and maybe even behind us in the pews today. When Jesus called his disciples to follow him, he was building a community of love and care, but it wasn't limited to one place and one time. After the resurrection, his community of disciples received the gift of the Spirit, as Jesus had promised, a sense of his presence that would never leave them. And that Spirit has been the gift of divine presence carried forth through all the generations who have let Jesus' path guide them on their life journey. Filled by the Spirit, instructed by Jesus' teachings, the body of Christ has continued to prove that, yes, God is with us. Do you see that? I'm guessing that you too have experienced affirmation of God's presence made known through the actions of the body of Christ. For me, that's the reason why I commit to being part of a faith community, so that I too can participate in meaningful actions that bring about healing in this world beloved to God. Sometimes we're blessed to be the recipients of that goodness, and always we are called to be conveyors of blessing, because we all have our gifts to share. We all have our own particular way of striking the rock to bring forth what is life-giving to someone, so that everyone can continue the journey quenched and refreshed. We are what St. Peter called living stones, part of a priesthood of believers who help each other by intervening when others need help. Like Moses striking that rock when the people had begun to wonder, is God with us or not? Like Jesus showing up in the darkest hours to offer people what they needed to survive and thrive, we, as the body of Christ, have the ability to do likewise, to answer that question in the affirmative. Yes, God is with us. The Spirit of the Lord is among us even now, made known to the world through the body of Christ. Let this song be a benediction and blessing of encouragement. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is peace. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is love, there is comfort in life's darkest hour. There is light in life, there is help and power in the Spirit of the Lord. May you be blessed. May you have what you need to be whole, and may God's love flow through you in your life, always, and all the ways that it can. Bless you.